Y'all forgive me if I look over here to my right. I've got a crick in my neck this morning. Woke up with it, and it's been a booger all day. So if I look like I'm looking weird or uncomfortable this way, it's not because of you. I've got a crick. All right, we are studying lesson 5 of Engraving Heavenly Truths, Jesus the Christ. I'm enjoying this study. Anytime we can really learn more about the life of Christ. That was one of my favorite classes when I was in school, and it's still just an awesome privilege just to sit down, even sometimes during the week, and read through the Gospels. And I love it. We are on, I don't know what number 40, I believe, in your workbook, but I don't know what number on my slide. I'm talking to myself a little bit here. Okay. Number 40 starts out with naming the 12 apostles. And of course, I've got it up here on the screen for you so that you can make it just a little bit easier for us. Peter, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew, Thomas, Matthew, James the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot. But what was it that we discussed last quarter to help us to remember? There was a tool that I said to help you remember. If you can't name off all 12, sometimes it's hard to remember all 12. It's good to put it into your memory, but if you can't remember who they are, at least remember where they are. Where does it mention them?
Matthew 10, 2 and 4, the Dr. Pepper.
The Dr. Pepper, yeah. Matthew 10, 2 and 4. So there you go. That's a memory tool for us. There was that Dr. Pepper, 10, 2 and 4. And that's a good help for us to remember. I did want to put this in there just for a second as well. There's 4 lists of the apostles, and you're going to find them in Matthew chapter 10, verses 2 through 4. You're going to see them in Mark chapter 3, verses 16 through 19. I don't know if that's easy for you to see or hard for you to read. I don't know. Luke chapter 6, and then Acts chapter 1. In the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, you're going to see all 12. But then you're going to see only 11 in the book of Acts. Why is that? Judas, exactly. Judas, the one who betrayed Christ, would hang himself, and then they replaced him with who? Matthias, yeah. What does the word apostle mean? One sent. That is exactly right. The word apostle means one who was sent. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11 says, and he gave some to be apostles. Does that mean that all followers of God are going to be said apostles? No, exactly. There's some people today that will claim to be an apostle of God. The only way you could become an apostle was how? Being touched, laying on of hands by Jesus. Laying on of hands by Jesus. The only way that the miracles could be bestowed, or that you could have the gifts of the miracles, was how? Laying on hands of the apostles. And so there was actual contact made in these circumstances. And of course, today, unless there are 2,000-year-old men walking around, the miraculous age has ceased, unless there's 2,000-year-old men that we don't know about. And I find that hard to believe. Who was the apostle who betrayed Jesus again? Judas Iscariot. Yeah, he's mentioned there in Matthew chapter 10 and verse 4. Who was the apostle who denied Jesus? Peter. Yeah, let's look at that. Matthew chapter 26. Now Peter sat without in the palace, and a damsel came unto him, saying, this is after Jesus had been turned over to the hand of the people. He had stood before the council and that sort of thing. It says here, it says, thou also wast with Jesus of Galilee, but he denied before them all, saying, I know not what thou sayest. Immediately after knowing that he was one who walked with Jesus, this shows also the very fact that these men, these apostles, were not without fault. Did Peter love Jesus?
Yes.
Yes, he absolutely did. But in the midst of a circumstance like this, he failed. He failed. He denied him. It says that he denied him. It says when he was gone out into the porch, another saw him and said unto him that there were that were there. This fellow was also with Jesus of Nazareth. And again, the second time, he denied with an oath, I did not know the man. I do not know the man. And then after a while came unto him, they stood by and said to Peter, surely thou art also one of them. See, he had been seen with them. Folks knew, hey, this fellow right here was with Jesus. And he began to curse and to swear, saying, I know not the man. And immediately the cock crew. What was told of Jesus told him, you're going to deny me 3 times before the cock crows. Before the rooster crows, you're going to hear, or you're going to deny me. He didn't believe him. He loved Jesus so much. But in the midst of this pressuring time, he failed. Look at what it says, that Peter remembered the word of Jesus. Immediately after he did what he said, what Jesus said was going to happen, he heard that rooster crow, and he remembered the word that Jesus said unto him, before the rooster crows, thou shalt deny me thrice. And he went out and wept bitterly. Is that godly sorrow? Weeping bitterly? Understanding I've trespassed against against God? Yes. Peter had godly sorrow. After knowing that he had done wrong, he wept bitterly. He understood that he had messed up. It's important that when we do mess up, when we do fall short, just like the apostle here gives us this example, we come back. We're sorry about it. We need to have sorrow. Sorrow is what leads to repentance, isn't it? Godly sorrow is absolutely needed in the realm of repentance. Who was the apostle that doubted? Thomas. Right. Let's look at that. And I want us, when we look at these, I want us to kind of think about putting ourselves in their shoes. I know that we say, I would never doubt God. I would never deny God. But given the circumstances that presented themselves, it says, but Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples, therefore, said unto him, okay, so he wasn't there when Jesus came and saw him. So when the disciples finally said, hey, we saw the Lord, he couldn't believe it. No, you didn't. He's gone. You didn't see him. He said, except I shall see in my hands the print of the nails, and put my finger in the print of the nails, and thrust my hand into his side, I will not believe. It was, when you look at this circumstance too, I want to explain this for just a minute. He's not doubting the power that God has to raise Jesus from the dead. Look at who he's doubting. He's doubting what was heard from the words of men. He's doubting the words of those men who saw Jesus. He's thinking, wait a minute now. There's no way. He's gone. You think about how hard or how heavy it would have been to have been one of the men that walked with Jesus, saw him performing the miracles, beside him every step of the way, watch him be nailed to a cross, be put into a tomb. What do you think you would say? And that's honest. What do you think you would say if you heard from the others that walked with him, after you saw everything that went down, I think in my circumstance, I would doubt what they were saying as well. He's not doubting the power of God here. He's doubting the word of man. Until I see it, I can't believe it. There's no way. There's no way. I saw with my own eyes every circumstance that led up to his death, everything. And now you're saying he's alive? There's no way. I want us to remember that. He didn't doubt God. He doubted, but he did not doubt God.
Wasn't he, in a way, Christ had told him that he would come back from the dead?
Yes. But like I said, you're standing there 2,000 years ago as Wayne, and you witness everything that happens. And without having seen him in the flesh the way that the other men had, when they tell you that they saw him, I'm asking you, would you believe it?
I don't know. I haven't been faced with that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. I haven't been faced with it either, but I'm saying in the midst of that circumstance, I can't say that I wouldn't have some doubt myself.
I wouldn't say that I would, but I do know, according to
Yeah, he told them they were coming back, but remember, even all the way up until his death on the cross, what was it? They didn't understand. You're going to build it back in 3 days. Remember, he told them that the temple, they're thinking physical. They're not thinking, they're thinking a physical kingdom, a building, a temple, not his body. And so, like I said, knowing the understanding, knowing that they couldn't quite grasp what he was saying to begin with while he walked with them, I don't know that it would be above me to even say I was doubting myself, because that's just, like I said, you don't think about people just getting up from the grave, especially after witnessing everything that this man went through. Jesus was not just nailed to a cross. He was beaten within an inch of his death before nailed to a cross, right in front of everybody.
John,
Yes, sir.
I hate to disagree with you.
That's okay. That's okay. I said this is what I believe.
But I believe that Thomas is doubting that Jesus is back or has arisen. Because if you go on to read all the way down about this account right here, it's pretty obvious that he just didn't believe. He said, except I should see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger to the print of his nails, and put my hand on his side, I will not believe. And then after 8 days, Jesus came to him and he saw him. And so what did Thomas say? He says, my Lord and my God. So I believe that Thomas didn't believe that he had arisen. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I do too. I'm not saying that. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I misunderstood what you said.
Yeah, I'm saying truly that he was not believing the word of man. He did not believe the other 11 that were standing there with him, or the other 10 that were standing there with him. He didn't have any faith in what they were saying.
I believe he didn't have any faith that Jesus had come back. If you really read all that goes into this context here, he doubted that Jesus was back. He doubted that they had seen him and that he was back. Because he says, unless I can see him and put my finger into the nails and to the side, I won't believe that he's back. And then when they did see Jesus, I think it said it was 8 days later.
That goes hand in hand with what I'm saying, though.
Huh?
That goes hand in hand with what I'm saying. They said he was back. He didn't believe that Jesus was back. That's what I was saying.
Well, yeah.
I don't know that I'm disagreeing with you. I don't know that we're on separate pages here. I think maybe there's a misunderstanding, because I am saying they heard what the men said. He was back. He didn't believe that he was back.
Well, that's okay. That's what I'm saying. He didn't believe he had arisen and was back in the flesh.
Well, before we get confused, let's move on to the next one then. The apostle who confessed Jesus was who? Who was it that confessed him?
Simon Peter.
Simon Peter, yeah. The same one that would deny him. What was it he said in Matthew chapter 16? Jesus asked him, he said, who am I, didn't he? Well, he said, who are you? He said, I'm Peter. He said, who am I? Well, I'm sorry. I had that backwards. He said, who am I? He said, Jesus. You're Jesus. And then he said, yes, and you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Matthew 16:16. And so he's telling him there, I confess, hey, you're Christ. Let's go there. Matthew 16. Simon Peter answered and said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. The Son of the living God. So confession is confessing that he is his son, that he is the Son of God. When we confess like that, that's one of the things in the steps of salvation. We hear, we believe, we repent, and then we confess. We need to confess before others that we believe he is the Son of God. Before we can go any further in our steps of salvation, we have to have that belief. We have to know that. I saw somebody coming in. I was just waiting. Morning.
In Acts 8, the Ethiopian eunuch, he made the same confession that Simon made, that thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God, and then he was baptized.
That's right. Confession is necessary. It's one of those things that, like I said, part of salvation. The apostle that confessed him was also the apostle that denied him. We've got, who was the apostle that Jesus loved? John. Go to John chapter 20. Looking at verse 2. It says, then she runneth and well, let's look at verse 1 first of all. The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early when it was dark, when it was yet dark, into the sepulchre. That is the bone box, the sepulchre. And seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre, the tomb. And when she runneth and cometh to Simon Peter, to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and said unto them, they have taken away the Lord out of our sepulchre, and he know not where they laid him. This is John who this is talking about. That was with Simon Peter. Who was the apostle that was a tax collector? Matthew, right. Matthew chapter 9 and verse 9. So you've got remember Simon the Zealot? You've got Simon the Zealot, and then you've got a tax collector. You got two, a tax collector and a zealot. A zealot was one who was against the government and giving money to the government. And then you've got a man who was one who was taking money. He was working for the government. But isn't it awesome that our God is that he's that strong and he's that powerful that he can put two unlikely people who would have ever even been friends in the same group to be associated as his followers. One who was against it, one who was for it, and make them friends, make them brothers. That's what the gospel does. What you and I grow up sometimes believing or seeing or I'll tell you what, I'll tell you like this. I was raised in a household where my grandfather and my father were somewhat racist against other skin colors. It didn't matter what, if you wasn't white, they had something negative to say at times, using slanderous words and that sort of thing. When I became a Christian, even having the past that I had, I don't know what it was about it, but I had a peace and a love in my heart for people. Not people just like people, not folks just in my group, but folks of all colors and all nationalities. I had a heart and a love and a care for these people that I had not had before. Christ can change us. And he very well did that with Simon the Zealot and with Matthew here. Like I said, I wanted to bring that up just because of the fact that he has the power to make our perspective a little bit different. I understand there are going to be cultural differences when you've got skin involved, because of the fact that you've got one person who grows up this way and you got another person that grows up this way. They're going to have conflicting interests. But one thing that can bring those two people together is the gospel of Christ, because the gospel of Christ is not going to just change one person. It's going to change both of them. And that is exactly how you and I should judge people, based off of the character of the person and not the color of their skin.
You judge by their record too.
Do what now?
You judge people by their record also.
Well, and I'll say this, but when two people come to Christ, their record is made clean. There's a clean slate that's being made. And so at that clean slate, I have to look at that brother now as my brother. He is a man of Christ. And of course, just like I would hold you accountable, I hold this brother accountable. And he's expected to hold me accountable. And that's what's awesome about the gospel. Two cultural differences do not deny the responsibility to hold each other upright. Now, I know, as well as you all know, that there are reputations that people have because of the way they've lived their life before. But when an individual comes to Christ, if he's not changed by the gospel, then I have a hard time believing that he came to Christ. If the person comes to Christ, then therefore he has an expectation to live godly. And if he lives godly, then you and I should treat him with godly respect, with respect just like he's my brother, no matter what circumstance or background. I guarantee you, I don't know how many people are in here, but a large percentage of you wouldn't have hung out with with the likes of me before I became a Christian. I was filthy mouthed. I was hanging out in bars, clubs, spending my time and I was just not a good man. But God changed me. He has the power to change anybody, no matter their background or their record. And that's the point. That's what I'm saying. No matter what these two men, Matthew and Simon the Zealot, had that were differences, just as Paul preached, when we come together, there should be no division. But we all be of the same mind and the same judgment. We can operate under unity, in unity with people who did not grow up the way we did. We absolutely can. We're going to have to spend eternity with some of these people. And I think a lot of times we categorize heaven. In our minds, we kind of think that, well, when we get there, it'll be a white heaven and there'll be a black heaven. But no, there's going to be one. And we have to understand that if an individual is changing their life, their character has changed. And you and I have a respect that we owe to that person as our brother or sister in Christ.
In the first century on up to this present time, history reveals a sordid past in religion where people were killed and persecuted and tortured and imprisoned by a group of people, not just an individual or two. Even in our lifetime, Hitler, in my lifetime, personally saw to it that 6 million people were killed, innocent people. And it's been like that ever since the first century. Church history reveals the persecution that Christians endured during the Holy Roman Empire.
Yeah.
You judge their record. So people today need to see what could happen again.
I agree 100%, Keith. I think a lot of times we miss the mark on some things. I think when it comes to unity, we stand divided when we shouldn't. We should absolutely stand for truth, but I think a lot of times we are divided on areas that was even in the church. You know, like I said, I'm not talking about denominationalism. I'm talking about in the church. There are issues that shouldn't be issues. You've got anti-congregation and liberal congregations and conservative congregations and all this stuff. Why? We should be one. We should be. Now, there are people, though, that aren't going to do what they're supposed to do. And you and I absolutely have a responsibility to just love God and love others and share with others. The thing about it is we have this requirement and this responsibility to love one another and to be who God expects us to be. We can't do that if we're hating on each other because of, or if we're standing divided. We can't. Go ahead.
Jesus says, behold, a new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you.
Yeah, he loved us when we didn't deserve it. When we had done nothing, we're sinners. While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. He loved us then, in that dirty state.
One more off.
That's okay.
Remark. You mentioned anti-congregations, liberal congregations, conservative congregations.
Yes, sir.
There's really only two kinds of congregations, scriptural and unscriptural.
Yeah. And you know, if we're allowing ourselves to be separated by ideas, then we're no different than the Corinthian church. When Paul was standing up to them and saying, y'all got to be in the same mind, same judgment. There's a requirement for us to be Christians. Period. Christians. And I think if we could unite, do what?
There's one Lord and one faith.
Yeah. One Lord, one faith. Yep. That's an absolute. If we could unite under that banner right there, I think we'd be all right.
We should.
I think so too. I was confused. Like I said, I'm a young Christian. I was very confused and taken back whenever I became a Christian. It was after I became a Christian that I started learning about the fact that there were congregations that considered themselves this way and that like anti-conservative, liberal, all of this. And they considered themselves this way and they separated themselves from each other when I thought, wait a minute, I joined the one church and there's division. The very thing that we preach about are against in denominationalism. There's division within in the Lord's church, and I thought this is hypocrisy. That's just not right. We've got to come to a union, a unity. And like I said, you've got folks who are stubborn in how they look at the Bible, or I don't know. If you talk to them, we're the ones that are stubborn, and if you talk to us, they're the ones that are stubborn. It's ridiculous. Put our differences aside. Remember, Paul told the church at Philippi, that was the only problem that they had. There were two women there that were causing discourse, Euodias and Syntyche. In chapter 4, he talks about these two women who used to help him, who had not been a help to him or an aid to him because they had issues, friction with one another. He told them, nip that in the bud. Why? Because simple as two people not agreeing on something can cause a split in a congregation who is trying to live godly. You've heard of folks separating because of the color of the carpet, because of the design of the building. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Is this at all what we're going to be standing in judgment for? The building, the structure? No, not at all. But so many people can't get their own opinions and their own stubbornness and put it to the side and focus on what's important. The Lord and acknowledging him and worshiping him, and that is what's important. Okay, we will finish up our Bible class on Wednesday. Sorry I didn't get as far as I wanted to. I just feel like it's necessary that we talk about circumstances like this. When we're talking about people who God has brought together, it's important for us to discuss the issues that we had 2,000 years after all this took place. So I appreciate your time, your attention, and your participation this morning. Do we have any daily Bible readers? Good deal. I did see a few of y'all come in the back. I just wanted to say, hey, it's good to have y'all.
I'll give you the elbow, lady.